Correct.
Big problems become big problems. You let small problems sit.
I'm here when you need me to be, and not before.
We're on.
We're on. Young Patrick Weiland, ladies and gentlemen. Young Patrick Weiland just dropped in. Just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in.
Our host is in a mood today, guys.
Man, no sleep. You tried doing this without sleep,
I've
okay?
done
5 in the morning, folks. I was up reading a story. That was me at 5 in the morning.
Well, I think the kids call that TMI.
Hold on, I can do it. I can do it. T M. Too much information.
Nice. Nice.
I am a millennial.
Oh, God. These 2 hours will be interesting for me.
That's about how much sleep I got last night. 2 hours.
Your Ben Joravsky show for Friday, February 14th, happy Valentine's Day, is just moments away. But before we get into this, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring this humble little program with an awkward host.
2 hours sleep, man.
The International Association of Machinists in Aerospace, not Aerosmith Workers, Local 126 and District 8 are sponsors. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9 are sponsors of this program. The International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150, couldn't do it without you. Oh, I got to fix the camera. It's not facing the right way. I'll fix that, I guess, when we start the song. The International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150 are sponsors, as well as our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. In fact, I'm going to fix the camera while you sing our song of the day, Ben.
I already sang one song.
You did. Was that it?
Well, I think I'll sing a different song now.
Okay.
Maybe a Valentine's Day song.
Ooh, love?
I don't have a Valentine's Day. For some reason, I was thinking of Simon and Garfunkel. Not sure why. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Come on, Pat, sing with me. Come on. Come to talk with you again. Wow, you know the words.
I'm trying to harmonize with you.
You
Well,
can't harmonize where there's no harmony.
Let's make sweet music, Ben.
I can hear music. Woo.
Damn, we're going 3 for 3
I
here.
know that's the Beach Boys, not the Beatles. Anyway,
Ooh.
not a huge Beach Boy fan, ladies and gentlemen. Just putting that out there. Not a huge Beach Boys fan, but I do love the Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel. And that's my song of the day, D.
The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Friday, February 14th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is The Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, it's another Rummana Rundown with Sun-Times editor Rummana Hussain. Bernie Sanders delegate Maggie Wunderly will join us, and it's the long-awaited return of the Illinois political know-it-alls Jacob Kaplan and Dan Pogoszelski. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Out of Their Mind Friday, and here's why. First of all, happy Valentine's Day, D. All right?
Happy Valentine's Day to you too,
Happy
Ben.
Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, P. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, man. It's Happy Valentine's Day to absolutely everyone. It's not what I want to talk about. but I
Ben,
just
you're
want to
really
say it.
sweet today.
What can I say, man? Did you get any candy?
No.
Oh, did you get any candy?
Not yet.
Oh, I bought some CBD gummies.
That is true. He bought some. Maybe a little too much information for everybody, but since it was cold, I picked young Dennis up today. He came out of his house. He was like, "Hey, man, you gotta try these gummies, man."
Now we're crossing the too much information.
He did not do that. Okay, he just said, "Hey, man, I got these gummies." Anyway,
That impression of me is getting better and better.
I want to get down to business, D. Enough with this Happy Valentine's Day talk. Too much Happy Valentine's Day talk. Not really a big fan of Valentine's Day, by the way, D. Just going to put that out there.
All right.
Not a huge fan.
Bah humbug.
Bah humbug. Anyway, get down to business. I want to tell you what's on my mind. I'm happy to say that there was something resembling a, how do I put this? Fair, as in fair and balanced, column in the New York Times about one Bernie Sanders. I've been talking about this for a while. The center swing of the Democratic Party has been waging war on Bernie for a while. The New York Times has taken up the charge. Guys, New York Times, let me just speak to you as a loyal reader, subscriber, holding up the paper with my subscription, which I've had for years. You're welcome. Tribune, too, you're welcome, even though your editorial board is out of its mind, too. But New York Times, let me just talk to you. You're supposedly the liberal paper. That's what everybody thinks of you as, a liberal paper. Can't you find one columnist, one columnist in the whole freaking paper that'll say something nice about Bernie Sanders once in a while? I mean, he's supported by roughly, 30 to 40% of the Democratic voters. He's got legions of young activists who are willing to go into the field, knock on doors, make phone calls, round up support for him. He's brought enthusiasm and energy to the Democratic primary, to the Democratic Party that's badly in need of it. It's so much cynicism and jaded sentiment out there. Everybody's gloom and doom. Oh, Trump's going to win. Oh, my God. I mean, you got these Bernie guys going out, Bernie men and women, I should say, knocking on doors, doing the hard work. And all these New York Times columnists just sitting back in the comfort of their little offices going, oh, Bernie can't win. Of course he can't win. My friends, the centrists, told me he can't win. Over lunch, we had martinis, whatever they drink. They say Bernie can't win, man.
Watch your hands on that table.
Oh, sorry. I'm feeling my inner Sergio Mims.
Your inner karate kid.
Yeah. So they say, now list all the columnists. They basically keep writing the same column. Nicholas Kristof, David Brooks, Tom Friedman, Tim Egan, Michelle Goldberg. She's supposed to be the liberal, the real liberal there. She was another one writing, oh, Bernie can't win. Oh, Bernie can't win. Every time they say that, Bernie can't win. And they seem like they really don't like him. They don't like the people he brings to the party. It's like they want him to shut up, sit down, and vote for whoever they tell him to vote for, which at the moment is one Michael Bloomberg.
That's correct.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Mueller, excuse me. I mean, we're going to examine the Michael Bloomberg phenomenon in greater detail as the day rolls on. I have a lot of thoughts on Michael Bloomberg, and a lot of people will be coming in the studio to discuss Michael Bloomberg for the moment. But let's just put Bloomberg aside. By the way, you talk about cynicism in politics. The notion that a Republican is now a Democrat, a man who has advocated almost every single program that the Democrats have rejected, is now like rising in the polls simply because he's got gazillions of dollars to buy up unlimited TV ads and Facebook messages. And Democrats everywhere. I mean, I hate to say it, folks. You're making Chicago look pretty good, Democrats everywhere. I always make fun of Chicago voters so dumb. They vote for Rahm because he wore a sweater. Ugh, he's a nice guy.
Worked on me. I like that sweater.
But Democrats are even worse. Mike, I saw him on Facebook. I'll just throw all my values out the window and vote for Michael Bloomberg because I saw his Facebook ad.
At least we hide our corruption, behind lies and stuff like that.
As opposed to
just paying people outright, saying, "Hey, Instagram influencer, I'll give you $150 to say nice things about me on Instagram." It's what Bloomberg's doing.
Yeah, he did. Hasn't he dropped that campaign?
Has he?
But by the way, like that's another thing. You're right. Say nice things about me on Instagram. Make funny memes about me. Put it out there, and it's like, oh wow, I saw a funny meme about Michael Bloomberg. Who cares what he thinks about stop and frisk? I'm voting for him. I know. I talk about Chicago voters, but Chicago voters, I want to apologize to you right now. Okay. You guys are freaking Socrates compared to the rest of the Democrats. Already in South Carolina, voters with Biden, they were all loving Biden, Yeah. And then they saw these great Bloomberg commercials. That's it. Sorry, Joe. Joe was the faithful wingman to Barack Obama for all those years. Supposedly he had the allegiance of black voters in the South because he was, a loyal aide to Obama. I saw Bloomberg on TV. I'm going to vote for Bloomberg. Same thing all over the place. New York Times columnists are trying to tell us Bloomberg's the man. Anyway, I'm supposed to talk about Bernie. So anyway, Bernie's got this legion of voters. Dennis, I'm stealing these lines from Dennis. He talks about this all the time.
And I'm suing your ass.
Copyright infringement.
By the way, joining us, Pat Weiland, for those not watching on the live stream.
Didn't I already say that?
I don't know. It may not be in the intro. I just wanted to make sure.
Young Patrick Weiland, comedian.
G'day.
Writer, actor. And he's.
I don't know why Ben likes Bernie so much. He only won 2 caucuses so far.
Yeah,
so.
no, a caucus and a
caucus
primary.
and a half.
Yeah, he won a caucus and a primary. It was actually a New Hampshire primary.
Oh,
But
New
anyway,
Hampshire.
He's
yeah,
2 for 2.
Right.
He's
right.
won both of the, I should say, elections that the Democrats have.
There you go.
He's won both of the elections that the Democrats have. He won the popular vote in Iowa, and he won the popular vote in New Hampshire, and he's still somehow or other one delegate down in the race.
What is electability? What's another word for electability?
Electability is we don't like the left of center views of Bernie Sanders, so we're going to concoct an argument that says he's unelectable, even though at the moment he's winning the election. So, this is the New York Times. They've been harping on this. And they keep coming back to this point that there's photographs of Bernie Sanders on his honeymoon in the Soviet Union. Every single I love this, man. I'm like, because I deal with millennials every day in my life, young Patrick Weiland. Everybody, I'm surrounded by millennials. They don't even know what the Soviet Union is, okay? Now,
it's a club in Ukrainian Village, isn't it?
That is correct. That's what it is on Damon, right near Chicago Avenue.
Nice.
So they don't know what the Soviet Union is. Supposedly, they're going to be petrified once they see an ad from Donald Trump saying that Bernie is a communist somehow or other because he had his honeymoon in the Soviet Union. By the way, I'd just like to say this right now. Donald Trump has bought into the same conventional wisdom. Eric Zorn wrote a very good column today, Chicago Tribune, talking about
What up, EZ?
What did you say?
What up, EZ?
Oh, yeah, easy.
My God,
Eric.
get more sleep when you do this show, please.
Hey, come on. I had 2 hours, man. Anyway, a good column about how the Trumpsters in South Carolina, led by Rush Limbaugh, have decided they're going to vote. The Republicans are going to vote in the Democratic primary for Bernie because they think Bernie will be easier to beat, which is kind of so I guess conventional wisdom pervades both parties or subscribing to the same conventional wisdom. I'd be a little suspicious of conventional wisdom in the face of all these volunteers who are going out. People who are committed to Bernie Sanders, but whatever. I also find it a little interesting that the Democrats, like the New York Times writers, are so fearful of the Soviet Union. Donald Trump will call absolutely anybody who runs on the Democratic Party as socialist. Now, then the standard response from people of the centrist persuasion is that, well, yeah, but in Bernie's case, he really is. Like, as if that distinction matters to voters who are bombarded by ads that just say, AOC, the socialist, has endorsed fill in the blank, whoever the Democratic nominee is. So, guys, it's like a distinction without a meaning. You're trying to create a fear that really is non-existent. I don't think you're exaggerating a fear that you have in the back regions of your brain, because that was a prevailing view when you came of age. Maybe the world has changed. Donald Trump's best friend, or one of his best friends, is Vladimir Putin, who used to be the head of the KGB.
And you know what? He calls him Mini Mike. He's, what, 5'8", I think?
Who are you talking about?
Trump. Trump calls Bloomberg Mini Mike. Putin is 5'7". So does he call him Mini Pooh?
That's a good point, although I do believe, not getting in the weeds here, that Michael Bloomberg is actually 5'4". Just throwing that out there. One of the things I was doing when I was incapable of sleeping last night, aside from reading these really eerie, weird short stories, I'll put that to the side. No one wants to hear about those short stories at the moment. I was obsessively reading articles on the internet, which is a no-no, because that really keeps you up, about Michael Bloomberg. Okay,
Awesome.
I've like crammed for the test. I could tell you all kinds of. So one of the things my subspecies of expertise is Bloomberg's height, because they've been going back and forth. There was like a Twitter war breaking out over how tall Bloomberg was. At various times in his life, Bloomberg has said he's taller than he actually is.
Right, he lied on his driver's license. That was one of the things I saw about his height?
Yeah, I think he said he was 5'8". At one time he joked. I think he was joking. He said he was 6'1". That's usually my joke. People go, Ben, how tall are you? 6'4". And they go, that's not true.
They do that.
But I think he's 5'4".
Well, you should run for president.
Here. Yes.
I'm 6'3".
Boy, if they don't like Sanders, why do they get a load of this guy?
The New York Times.
Man, I went to bed at 5 a.m.
The worst part is not going to bed at 5 a.m. It's getting up at 7 a.m. That's the worst part. That's the part that's no good. If you go to bed at 5 a.m. and get up at noon, hey, what's the problem? But 5 to 7. Anyway, I should stop picking on the New York Times, because they're not as bad as, what is it called, D? MSNBC.
Oh.
Now, confession time here. I'm not a big TV watcher, so I don't watch MSNBC. I just always assume MSNBC were the liberals were, right? That's that's the liberal station.
That's not the case?
No, it was Dennis, young Dennis, who was. By the way, people don't realize this about Dennis. He does a great imitation of Chris Matthews. Did you know that?
Of Chris Matthews?
Yes, this was where I was going with this. Come on, D, do your Chris Matthews. Great. Come on.
I really want to. I'm Chris Matthews, and they're gonna be. I just feel like Chris Matthews has a lot of run-on sentences. That kind of sounds like a carnival barker or something.
You need the Boston accent, young Dennis. Take it away.
Oh, you want me to do it?
Yeah, of course.
What I would say? Hey, that Bernie Sanders, he's crazy. Give me a drink. Go.
It's
Central
really,
Park, go!
He's heading into Bill Barr country.
Burr.
My bad.
There you go.
But
2 hours.
2 hours. Bill Burr. But I always make that mistake anyway, because William Barr is the Attorney General. Bill Burr is a comedian.
Now that's a podcast. Burr and Barr.
Burr and Barr.
In a bar. Wow. That's good stuff.
That's good. D.
Hey, so what's your stance on the Ukrainian investigation? Hey, that was kind of weird.
And then no one could tell the difference between their accents. You got the clip to play?
Yes, I do.
Yes, sir. Let's just listen to Crazy Chris. I've been meaning to talk about this for a while, since Dennis notified me of this the other day. Utterly insane person on MSNBC.
Before we play that clip, on the live stream chat, Bruce, no, Pat is not drinking a beer. Okay, here we go.
I have my own views of the word socialist, and I'll be glad to share them with you in private. And they go back to the early 1950s. I have an attitude about them. I remember the Cold War. I have an attitude towards Castro. I believe if Castro and the Reds had won the Cold War, there would have been executions in Central Park, and I might have been one of the ones getting executed. And certain other people would be there cheering, okay? So I have a problem with people who took the other side. I don't know who Bernie supports over these years. I don't know what he means by social. 1 week it's Denmark. We're going to be like Denmark. Okay, that's harmless. That's basically a capitalist country with a lot of good social welfare programs. Denmark is harmless.
He's pretty clearly in the Denmark category, yeah.
Are you sure? How do you know? Did he tell you that?
Well, I mean, that's what he says, and that's what his agenda calls for, right?
Yeah.
He's not calling for any...
Let's see. Let's figure that one out.
But we haven't seen a campaign yet where video of him praising the other version,
Right,
which is
and
Castro, has been used.
Well, but
it will be used.
That's a question
we
of
haven't
how,
seen how that
of how tangible, what the effect that has.
Well, what does he think of Castro? That's a great question. What did you think of Fidel Ismo? We all thought he was great when he first. I thought he was cheering like mad for him when he first went in, and then he became a communist and started shooting every one of his enemies.
Okay. Hold those thoughts on Cuban Revolution. I have to go back to the spin room and Democratic presidential candidate.
All right, that's Chris Matthews, and it was Chris Hayes. Yep. Come on, Chris Hayes. You got to up that defense of Bernie Sanders a little bit. Your partner on the set is a freaking lunatic. You got to know that, all right? So just, I know he's insane, but you should stand up to him a little bit on this point. First of all, I could break this down so many which ways, any which way you want. There were no communists in this country killing anybody. The wars against communism were not fought on the United States. They were fought on other shores, on other countries, and there was a lot of communists being killed by American bombs, et cetera, and so forth. And by the way, Chris Matthews, I looked up his biography, just curious, was nowhere near a war at any time in his life. He was nowhere near the fight in communism. I'm not saying it's a great thing to have been in the war of communism. I'm just saying he acts as though, he was Rambo with guns and grenades and knives and going up into the hills of Cuba to do hand-to-hand combat with Castro. He was in the Peace Corps. Nothing against the Peace Corps. I have tremendous admiration for the Peace Corps. But he was the last thing on the front lines in a war against communism. And so it's just unimaginable, this notion that Castro was going to conquer the United States, little Cuba, off the coastline of Florida, was going to conquer the United States.
And he was going to say, where's Chris Matthews?
Where's Chris Matthews? 30-year-old Chris Matthews.
I'm going to find him.
Find him and
first.
take him to Central Park.
Make an example of this Peace Corps guy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Utterly insane. Utterly insane. Redbaiting by MSNBC.
Redbaiting.
Trying to and redbaiting doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, throwback.
Again, one more time, folks. Putin, who's the head of the KGB, during this time when supposedly the communists were ready to line people up in Central Park and kill them, head of the KGB in the Cold War that Chris Matthews is talking about, is an ally and friend of one Donald John Trump. So if you're going to redbait, you can redbait on Trump all you want. So I guess if Mike Bloomberg does win, we're going to get a ton of redbaiting commercials linking Putin to Trump, right? Monroe Anderson, our guest every Wednesday, will love those commercials. But Chris Matthews has lost his freaking mind, and this is what I have to say about that. I thought MSNBC was the liberal station, but clearly, with liberals like that, we don't even need Fox. Great show today, everybody. Rummana Hussain will be here. Got Rummana's rundown. We're going to be talking about the do not hire list, among other things, with Rummana. Maggie Wunderly will be here. Bernie Sanders, not just
Maggie.
Now,
Maggie.
When Maggie comes in, she's going to be all modest. Ben, no, I didn't put the slate together. The National Party did. Folks, let me tell you, Maggie Wunderly knows the rule book inside and out on what governs the process of the nominating the presidential candidate to run against Donald John Trump. She knows it inside and out. So it's kind of interesting when they're sort of changing the rules a little bit to benefit Michael Bloomberg. See what Maggie Wunderly has to say about that. She's been going to meetings for the last 4 years. And, of course, the political know-it-alls. Danny Pogoszelski and Jacob Kaplan will be in to talk all things politics. So, Patrick, it'll be politics.
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 Politics. Redbaiting, a little redbaiting in there.
A little redbaiting thrown in.
Okay.
And politics.
And politics, okay.
But before we do that, you know what we're going to do?
Tell me.
We're going to turn things over to the young man from Alton, Illinois. Oh, yeah. The man they call Dr. Doobie with the news.
Politics?
In this economy?
How's it going, everybody? By the way, Pat Weiland, I realized watching that MSNBC video, kind of looked like Chris Hayes, dude.
Me?
Yeah.
Who, me?
Yes, he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, he looked a little like Chris
he does
Hayes.
look Chris Hayes. Hey, Chris, take a stand.
I will be the Hayes to someone's Matthews any day of the week.
If you could put your face in that camera real quick and let the people see,
Should we make a poll about it?
Chris Matthews, yay, nay? I think so.
Yeah. By the way, Patrick Weiland
Seem a lot cooler than him.
is the genius behind our social media. People should know that.
I am but a conduit, but if you are interacting with Ben Joravsky on Twitter, on Facebook, and soon Instagram, I have a hand in that. But all the content, I defer to these gentlemen. You know that they are the cooks in the kitchen that make the delicious sauce. I am but the ratatouille.
A lot of people are sad right now. Oh, Ben's not handling the Instagram account anymore. No, you're getting taken off, dude. Give us the keys.
They won't even let me do Twitter. Ben, don't. You failed tweet. You're just bad.
I don't even know how to do Twitter. He knows.
All right, time out.
He knows.
Do you think, I know the young doctor from Alton wants to do the news, but I just have to ask you this. You're a Twitter expert. All right, you've been following Donald John Trump for a while, and the Twitter war is exploding between Michael Bloomberg and Donald John Trump, which is perhaps the most intriguing part of Michael Bloomberg's campaign, in my humble opinion.
Yes.
All right, so do you think Michael Bloomberg runs his Twitter account, or does he have someone, his own equivalent of Patrick Weiland doing the job?
I think that it's not because he's too busy, but I think it's very similar to Trump. You know, the more I learn about this Michael Bloomberg fellow, the more that I see that people say that he is the blue Trump. And I think he's very similar to Trump in the regard that there are probably firewalls of people whose singular job it is to keep him from tweeting things.
Oh, to keep him from tweeting things.
Yes.
So you don't think he's... Wait, time out. You don't think... So that tweet that went out yesterday from Bloomberg talking about how Donald Trump, he knows the social circles that Donald Trump runs in New York City, and he could tell you, Donald Trump, that they all laugh at you because you're a freaking failure. Do you think Michael Bloomberg, wrote that, or do you think he had an aide who wrote that?
I think that it was probably his idea, but I don't think that, does he do his own dishes? You know what I mean? Like, where does it end?
But don't you think Donald Trump does his own tweets?
I think that he can do his own tweets, but I think increasingly there are people whose job it is to make sure that he's sticking to campaign. We have an election to win, sir. I think that's the only thing that they can hold in front of him and say, let's take a breath and think about this before we send it out to the entire planet.
Well, they're not doing a good job of getting him to take a breath.
No, they're not.
His stuff that he tweeted out about the Roger Stone case was really, it was so over the top. Now, Barr, we haven't even talked about that. Barr
Well,
says,
I don't know. I think that fits in. There was this picture years ago of Steve Bannon standing in front of a whiteboard. And you can Google this, folks, but just Google Steve Bannon whiteboard. And it was when he worked in the White House. He had an office in the White House, and there were all these lists and lists and lists of topics behind. And they were red meat for the base issues. They know what they're doing. And when he tweets out stuff about Barr and how, the Stone case is, polluted and all that, so let me be clear. I think that there are people whose job it is to monitor his tweets, but I don't think they're saying, oh, that's not very presidential, sir. I think they're saying, very good, sir. Jake in Alabama will love this tweet. You know what I mean?
Jake in Alabama. All right, speaking of Jake in Alabama, Dr. D in Alton with the news.
For the fourth and final time this week, let's find out what's happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. Not Jake, not a doctor. Name's Dennis. It's a very frigid and frozen Friday, and it looks like both our Illinois governor and our Chicago mayor began their days by taking it easy and playing it safe by doing what they have loved to do most since taking office. Governor J.B. Pritzker's at the Thompson Center. He's always at the Thompson Center. He's there to discuss successful government efficiencies with state agency leaders. And Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is speaking at a city club luncheon. Can't say I blame her. No sense in overworking yourself in this drastic weather. She loves luncheons, everybody. Later on, Lori Lightfoot will be at the Union League Club, and Ben, prepare to be jealous. She'll be attending the NBA's Building Bridges Through Basketball event at the Union League's Boys and Girls Club. Ben Joravsky, time to put you in the hot seat. During her mayoral election campaign, we learned that Mayor Lori Lightfoot is a fan of basketball. Apparently, she played point guard. Ben Joravsky. Who is Lori Lightfoot's favorite basketball player?
Oh, no question. Rummana Hussain.
Oh, right.
Rummana Hussain, back in the day at Niles West, was a ferocious point guard, great on defense, and could hit the outside shot. But her second favorite after Rummana Hussain, well, she was a point guard, so I'm going to go with point guard. I'm going to say that Lori Lightfoot's favorite player is Isaiah Thomas.
Isaiah Thomas. Live stream chat, weigh in. Who is Lori Lightfoot's favorite basketball player? We'll try to read your comments before the show ends, at least. Yes, the National Basketball Association is in town for their All-Star Weekend. Superstars of professional basketball's past, present, and future, along with several hoops junkies, are arriving in Chicago from all throughout the nation as we speak. And Ben, prepare to be really jealous because former president and apparent NBA fanatic number 44 Barack Obama is getting in on the festivities. Officials with the Obama Foundation have announced that on Saturday, Obama is scheduled to sit in on a conversation for what is being called, quote, a fireside chat with 3 of the league's biggest stars. Giannis Antetokounmpo, took me like 3 years to learn how to say that one, a forward for the Milwaukee Bucks, Kevin Love, a power forward for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and Chris Paul, a point guard for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yeah, Obama's in town. Now, it's funny because an interesting event took place a couple of days back. As any Chicago political nerd will tell you, like Ben, the Barack Obama Presidential Center will be coming to the city soon. It will be in Woodlawn. It'll be a gigantic, fancy, ugly building. Kind of looks like a Glade plug-in. But the residents of Woodlawn aren't new. They know how the city works. Anytime a big, fancy, ugly building comes to the neighborhood, really rich people start moving in, leaving the people who have always lived there worried about the G word. All together now, gentrification.
Yes.
Oh, my. That's correct.
That's a great
what are you
riff,
doing,
man.
Pat? Oh, he's recording me. All right, about a dozen Chicago residents staged a sit-in outside Mayor Lightfoot's City Hall office on Tuesday afternoon, demanding a meeting to discuss preserving affordable housing near the site of the proposed Obama Presidential Center. Protesters chanted, "Mama, mama, can't you see what displacements done to me?" Ben Joravsky, do you think our 44th president, Obama mama, has seen what displacement has done to them? Is he aware of what went down on Tuesday?
I believe he is aware of what went down on Tuesday. Absolutely. I'm sure he's kept abreast of all these things. And from our conversation with Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor from last week, she was in the studio talking about this. At the moment, he's not prepared to make any sort of compromise with the community on the community benefits agreement by putting in some kind of protection to help people who live in the neighborhood or low income or moderate income from rising rents or rising property taxes. Let's face it, folks, this gets to the socialism issue. When it's poor people in the face of developers, there's no such thing as government coming to their aid. It's like, sorry, we are in a free market society. But it's when it's wealthy people whose interests have to be protected, like let's say in 2008 when the markets crashed. Oh, well, where's the safety net when we really need it? So socialism for the rich, free market for the poor. By the way, there's also socialism in the NBA, as long as we're mentioning the NBA, National Basketball Association. I don't know if you know this, D, but they have rules that protect the interest of the owners. There's a cap on the amount of salaries that any player that the owners can pay their players. If you exceed the cap, you have to pay a fine. I don't know if you know that, D. If that's not intervention in the marketplace, I don't know what is. So again, socialism exists to protect the interest of wealthy people, but when it comes to everyday Joes like you, me, Pat, and Rummana, it's a free market world.
All right, and finally, our last piece of local news here, then we'll get to the Rummana rundown. Looks like 2020 presidential candidate, the guy Ben's been talking about for about 15 minutes, Bernie Sanders, made an endorsement. No, guys, he didn't endorse Chris Matthews. Bernie Sanders has endorsed Cook County State's Attorney incumbent Kim Foxx. Here's the quote from Bernie Sanders. "Now is the moment to fundamentally transform our racist and broken criminal justice system by ending mass incarceration."
I thought Bernie had just come into the studio with that.
It was me, Dennis, the whole time.
Yes, we'll be talking with Rummana about the Kim Foxx, the latest chapter in Smollett Gate, et cetera, and so forth. I'm sure Bernie didn't mention Smollett Gate in his endorsement, but I'm with him. I've decided at the moment I'm going to vote for Kim Foxx because I agree with the Chicago Sun-Times editorial. I tease this sometimes when I disagree with their editorials, but in this particular one, when I take a look at the full record of Kim Foxx, I think the Smollett Gate, as entertaining as a topic it is for Rummana myself to talk about, or for myself and Andy Grimm to talk about, and I cannot stop talking about it. I do not think it's the most significant thing in Kim Foxx's career, and I think she warrants a vote because she's changing people's attitude about criminal justice in Cook County. So I'm with Bernie on that one.
Call me crazy, but after your interview, I'm sort of sliding in the DM. Donna Moore.
He's a huge Donna Moore fan.
He does not get that reference.
Fran Spielman, right here in this very studio. He's the DM. Yeah.
Do you know what that means?
DM, drunken motorist. DMV.
Direct message.
If I may.
Oh,
yes.
direct message.
Direct message.
That's our social media guy.
Social media.
So yeah,
It's the future.
Fran Spielman did the interview with Donna Moore in this very studio, and ever since that, Dennis has been doing cartwheels for Donna Moore, Rummana, and is that a Donna Moore T-shirt?
Understand that either.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
What would you ask me, Ben?
Is that a Donna Moore T-shirt you're wearing?
Why, yes, it is.
All right, let's see if Rummana can answer this question. For 10 trivia points, Rummana Hussain, what high school did Donna Moore go to?
Oh, that I won't know.
I'll tell you what.
You're normal.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't know. I don't know where.
Evanston High School.
Oh, did she? Oh, okay. Did she go to high school with you?
No, she's younger than me. Everybody's younger than me. All right.
All right. Well, of course, we'll keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along. Real quick, Kyle weighed in on Lori Lightfoot's favorite basketball player, NBA player. Kyle says, well, who is an NBA player who holds grudges? A dirty player, maybe. Kurt Rambis is Lightfoot's favorite player.
Kurt Rambis holding grudges. Yes, Kurt Rambis. Power forward for which team, D?
Los Angeles Lakers.
Very good, young man.
All right, everybody, don't go anywhere. The Ben Joravsky Show will be right back. It's this week's Rummana Rundown. Don't go anywhere.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
But we got to get down to business.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Every Friday, it's Rummana Rundown. Rummana Hussain, editor for the Chicago Sun-Times. We have a whole list of things we're going to get to. Rummana, you ready to rock and roll?
Yep.
All right. Do Not Hire. I was obsessed with this story yesterday. It broke in the Chicago Sun-Times. Fran Spielman, let's give her a shout-out. Front page news in the Sun-Times with the headline. What was the headline? Hold your hire. Hold your hire.
Yeah.
Hold the Sun-Times headline writers.
I'm telling you, I tell those guys all the time that they need to be on your show.
The only way they're going to come on is if you lead them literally in
I know.
here.
Next time you're around here, just show up in the newsroom, and I'll bring them to you.
All right, we'll bring them on. They'll be like, hubba, hubba. These guys are ferocious when it comes to writing headlines, but apparently they don't like to talk too much. Anyway, great headline, Hold Your Hire. Lori Lightfoot. I already gave my view on this. I'm not a fan, to put it mildly, of do not hire lists. But in this particular case, the do not hire list had included Eddie Johnson and was Bill McCaffrey, the former press secretary for the law department. And it just seemed really nasty and not petty and unnecessary. What are your thoughts about all this?
I thought it was interesting. I thought the Eddie Johnson, that made more sense to me. I'm just saying for someone, looking outside and knowing what I know or what has been reported, Eddie Johnson being put on the do not hire list, I could see that. And I don't know. I'm not going to give my opinion whether or not I think it's right. But the Bill McCaffrey one is more of a head scratcher because he kind of left abruptly. I mean, there was some sort of ethical issues that he raised or questions about ethical issues that he raised, and then he got fired. And so it's interesting why he's placed on this do not hire list. Because from what I know, I mean, people have been pretty, they've praised him, for being pretty fair when he talks about the city. I don't know. I haven't dealt with him in a long time because I'm not a reporter. But most people that I know who cover politics said that he's always been professional and, got back to them and gave information. So I think that's kind of interesting. But I don't know. I've never seen a do not hire list from the city. So I'm wondering if past superintendents who, had been fired or, left on, I guess not so great terms, if they were ever put on such a list. And I don't know if you read Fran's story, as you told me. This is a FOIA request that she made. There's 29 pages of people. There's about 689 names, and I think 100 names were added since Lori Lightfoot took office. It'd be interesting to know how many have been put on a list since another mayor, took office, or, is 100 a normal number? So those are the two. I remember when we talked about this at the afternoon news meeting the day before this came out in the paper, and I actually asked, I'm like, who else is on there? And, there's obviously names on there that you see. I think Jason Van Dyke was on there, and the other officer involved in the Quintino Legrier. Why am I forgetting? I'm blanking on his name at this point. Rialmo, yeah. So Rialmo was on there too. But these two names, obviously, being fired recently in December, were things that popped out for Fran.
Well, so. You raise a good point. I don't know, like, for instance, Gary McCarthy. Gary McCarthy was the police chief that Rahm fired, threw under the bus when somebody had to take the hit for the Quan McDonald video. Rahm was, it was his administration that kept it from the public view, but they blamed it all on McCarthy, threw him under the bus. So is he on a do not hire list?
Yeah, is Jody Weiss on a do not hire list? I was just curious, how it works.
But it's, the bizarre thing, why even there's no way anybody's going to hire Eddie Johnson. Okay, he was humiliated already with all the headlines and all the stories about his personal life. Lori Lightfoot, very public denunciation of him. He was drummed out, sent out of the city, let go. And so, what do you, who's going to hire him?
I guess it's like a final nail in the coffin, right? It's kind of like another, here's a little twist, like a knife.
Yeah, a little knife.
Twist. It's like,
Yeah, and then the kid, McCaffrey, who I don't know, because I've never met him. I don't think I've ever.
I don't think I've ever met him face to face, but I've talked to him.
That's ridiculous. That's the one. That's the story that really gets to me, because that's the one where he was fired when the story emerged that Lori Lightfoot's corporation counsel, Flessner, actually lived in Naperville and voted Republican primary in 2018. That's the part of the story I will never let go of, Rummana Hussain. The guy voted in the Republican primary in 2018. That meant he had to vote for either Rauner or Jeannie Ives. Just think about that for a moment.
Yeah, and so I think most people would say Eddie Johnson, they can understand. And if people remember, he allegedly lied about where he was, and he was out at a bar with another woman that wasn't his wife, and his car was idling outside his house, and there's all these questions, and that investigation is still pending. If the inspector general, the city inspector general, still doing the investigation, but apparently he lied to Lori Lightfoot, allegedly.
That's what she says.
That's what she said. Yeah, we don't know exactly what happened, but I would think that on the face of it, a lot of people would be like, okay, I can understand Eddie Johnson being placed on this list, but I think a lot of people would say they don't get Bill McCaffrey and why he's placed on the list.
That is such a Chicago attitude. First of all, accepting the do not hire list. You know what I mean? Well, I'll cut my difference. I'll let McCaffrey be on the do not. Johnson, okay, because
I'm just saying that we know more, or we know more about the allegations in the Johnson case, and we do obviously know a little bit about the McCaffrey case, but it was kind of, I don't know if you remember when it happened. I remember being home and seeing one tweet about it, It was just one tweet. Like one news reporter knew about it. I think it was a television reporter, and like nobody else knew about it. It was late at night. And I sent that tweet to the city desk, and very few people knew. It was just so didn't make any sense. It just came out of nowhere, and it was like I think it was a Friday night. I could be wrong, but it was in the night when it came out. Yeah. And so it was a little different than the way Eddie Johnson, there's like a huge news conference with Eddie Johnson. And I'm just saying, like, on the face of it, I'm not saying, I'm not making any judgment, but I'm saying a lot of people would say that they could understand Eddie Johnson given the ire that she showed, that Lori Lightfoot showed, and, this whole like dog and pony show with Bill McCaffrey. It was one reporter reporting this like at 10 o'clock at night. And I just remember it being it was a random, nobody else picked up on it or couldn't confirm it.
Yeah.
And it could have been a Friday night because I remember sending it at the city desk and we didn't get it till like Saturday, I think, or at least a couple hours later.
Yeah, no, it was sort of in the middle of the night. By the way, they're going to put Dennis on the do not hire list if he keeps saying those snarky things about.
I think I'm on it. Milwaukee, here I come.
He's on the do not hire list.
We're probably all on it.
We're all on it. Maggie Wunderly's not on that do not hire list. That's for sure. Our next guest is comfortably seated. We're going to bring her on in about a half an hour or so. All right. Speaking of ongoing investigations, Rummana and I have been discussing Smollett Gate from the moment it broke. And latest twist and turn in this ongoing saga, Rummana.
Well, the latest is that, do you remember the retired judge, Sheila O'Brien?
Oh, yeah.
She is the one one that pushed and kept filing motions and asked for a special prosecutor in the matter and how in how the Jussie Smollett case was handled by the state's attorney's office, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. Now, as we all know, Jussie Smollett was charged with disorderly conduct for filing a false police report, allegedly filing a false police report. He goes into court and the charges are dropped a couple days later. No explanation. He gets off, doesn't have to admit his guilt. So obviously there's a lot of questions. It caused a firestorm of controversy. Kim Foxx, she's, for her elections, her opponents, that's the lead thing that they're always bringing up. Jussie Smollett. So we're still hearing this name. And anyway, the police said that he had faked a hate crime against himself. He asked these two men that he knew to pretend like they were attacking him. And then he pointed out that he was attacked by by somebody who was making racist and homophobic comments at him. Anyway, so fast forward Tuesday, so the judge, Sheila O'Brien, who kept pushing for this, a judge finally granted in August that a special prosecutor would be hired. That's Dan Webb, former U.S. prosecutor. And Dan Webb on Tuesday announced that Jussie Smollett is charged again. I believe it was 6 counts of disorderly conduct, if I'm not incorrect. Anyway, so Jussie Smollett's going to be back in court in late February, just so letting you know. February 24th, I think, he's going to be back in court. He's going to come back to Chicago. He's not done. So now that case is pending, and the special prosecutor is still looking into it. So today, the special prosecutor case was back in front of Judge Michael Tuman, and he told Sheila O'Brien, basically, like I said, there's a lot of names being thrown around here. Sheila O'Brien is, like, again, the judge who, former judge, retired judge who came and kept pestering, the judges at 26 in California, or at least the chief judge, to hire like a special prosecutor. And then the special judge was appointed. And so today, Judge Tuman told Sheila O'Brien she has to stop filing motions in this case.
Wow, man. Stop it already.
Stop it. Because her recent filings, he said that basically she provided a service by pushing for this, but he said basically her services are no longer needed. She had, in her latest set of motions, she had said that it was wrong for Kim Foxx to hire private attorneys to deal with this case. And Dan Webb actually said he had no problem with her hiring a private attorneys, because they said that there's a lot of files and, thousands of pages of documents to go through. So it's kind of a normal thing. So Sheila O'Brien was objecting to Kim Foxx hiring, her office hiring like other attorneys. Mm-hmm. And she also has a private attorney that, who represents her. He was in court today and he's doing it pro bono. So that was the latest in the case. So
wait, who has a private attorney?
Kim Foxx does.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Washington, D.C. based attorney representing her. And apparently he's doing the work pro bono. So that's the latest. Basically, the judge telling Sheila O'Brien, okay, thanks for your service. Now, if you want to file a motion in the future, you're basically barred from doing it unless you get permission. So that's the latest. It's like it's kind of inside baseball, but it's every time the Smollett case comes up, we are doing a story on it. So I actually edited that story as soon as I came in.
Well, like I said,
today.
It's irresistible, and I've split mind on this one. It's an irresistible story for all the reasons you just cited, all the names, all the personalities, all the politicking, the celebrity angle, the ludicrous story itself, the fact that it's become fodder for comedians. David Chappelle's bit about it is hilarious. For all that reasons, it's irresistible. Then the other part of me says, when I think of all the issues facing criminal justice in Cook County and the city of Chicago, I mean, this is like a sideshow, if you follow what I'm saying. An interesting, fun to watch sideshow.
It could be a sideshow, but it also, I think, like I've said before, I think it's good to raise questions as to what happened. Would you do this if I don't know. I think there's definitely some people who I've talked to who think that this is like, we shouldn't even be talking about the Jussie Smollett case. But I don't think it has to do with, I think a lot of people who would argue otherwise would say that it's not necessarily about Jussie Smollett. It's about how the office handled the case and celebrity or, pull from politicians or, how it works. So I think it's a question of how the office operated in this case. So I think there are good questions. I think people would say there's people on both sides who, like at the extreme, there's definitely some people who are taking it to another level. And then, in terms of telling Kim Foxx that, this is like the worst thing that ever happened. And a lot of people said, well, is this the only thing? You kind of look at, like, as you mentioned, you have to look at her entire, status or entire, work as a state's attorney since she came in. Well, so I think it'll be interesting to see. I mean, she got Bernie Sanders.
Got Bernie Sanders support.
And I think she's getting Tammy Duckworth's endorsement today. So,
and Lori Lightfoot's.
Lori Lightfoot's endorsement. So
Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, yeah. So the question is whether or not this is really going to be that damaging.
Yeah. And also she has the Chicago Sun-Times editorial support.
Yeah, we supported her.
I've urged everybody
I should say the editorial board supported. I will not say we.
The views and opinions of the editorial board do not necessarily reflect those of Rummana Hussain.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's not get that twisted. But
you saw the Mark Conkel patch piece, right?
I did not see
Mark Conkel, who used to work at the Sun-Times, wrote a piece about how our investors gave $750,000 to Kim Foxx. So there's some going back and forth with some editorial writers and Mark Conkel. I can tell you that much.
Oh, I did not know Mark Conkel weighed in.
I'll send you a link.
At one point in my life, Mark Conkel was my boss. That's a whole interesting chapter in the history of the Chicago.
I'm telling
Reader.
you, everybody knows everyone.
I met him once. Only met Mark Conkel once. Big fella, as I
know
like
him
to
pretty
call
well.
him. And Mark Conkel, yes, indeed. Boy, let's put that one.
I remember that guy.
Yeah, you remember Big Fella?
Yeah, you had the story about the one time. No, I'm not going to do it.
Mark Conkel. Yeah,
I'll send you the link. He did. I didn't know you guys had dinner together.
Mark Conkel, yeah. Well, when he became the boss, he wanted to meet me. So I said, all right, get down here. That's kind of how he was, He was like Lou Grant. You ever see Lou Grant? Barking stuff out because I'm Mark Conkel.
Was that
millennials, hang tight.
Was Lou Grant in the Mary Tyler Show, or was he a different show?
I'm looking at Maggie. Do you know who Lou Grant is? No? Okay. I'll tell you what, though. She knows everything to know about the delegate selection process in the state of Illinois. Forget that, millennials. I did not even mention Lou Grant. Even Mark Conkel's like, who's Lou Grant? Ruff. Mark Conkel. I ate a lot of biscuits today. Anyway, Mark Conkel. What a dinner night that was.
I will send you the link to his article.
Oh, I'm looking forward to reading more Mark Conkel. All right. Smollettgate. I can't. I have to, again, I think, like I said, Rummana, I think you're correct when you say it's definitely worth discussing. If you want to hear a different view of a Smollettgate than you might hear from a Mark Conkel, you should definitely check out the Del Marie Cobb interview we did, but boy, did she go to town on the whole issue. Her attitude about what the media and Kim Foxx and Smollettgate, interesting stuff. All right, wow, my worlds came together. Larry David and we were Donald Trump and Michael Bloomberg. A tweet war has broken out Bloomberg and Trump, and Larry David got thrown into this as well. Rummana, help us make sense of all what's going on here.
With the Larry David?
Yeah.
Well, I told you about that episode with the MAGA hat.
Yes, you did.
And I laughed about it, and I was expecting Donald Trump to tweet about it, but I didn't know he was going to tweet what he did this week. So he basically tweeted part of the show. Remember I told you there was a biker in the episode where he I think Larry David cut him off, or they were just kind of driving, and it looks like it was gonna be some confrontation. So the guy, the biker pulls up to Larry David, and he quickly puts on the MAGA hat, and then the guy's like, oh, and then his tone kind of changed. Yeah, he's like, be more careful. You should be more careful next time. So he was a Trump supporter, just insinuating. So Larry David's using the MAGA hat basically mostly in Hollywood to repel people so they don't come near him or want to do deals or shows with him or, any projects. So it's a way to kind of keep people away from him. So anyway, Donald Trump tweets that incident with the biker, and he said, tough guys for Trump or something. And then everybody just started tweeting him and saying, did he see the whole episode? Does he know why? So it was kind of funny because just the day before, I think Larry David was on a show and somebody asked him about that episode and said, don't you think you're alienating Trump supporters? And Larry David's like, I don't give a F.
Yeah.
You can alienate yourselves. It's totally fine. So it was funny. It just happened 1 or 2 days before. And I didn't even know that about Donald Trump's tweet. I just came into work and I saw Larry David was trending on Twitter. You know what trending means, right?
Yes, I do. Okay.
I'm just asking.
I'm really hip.
Since you know.
Don't send him any DMs.
So as soon as I saw that trending, I was like, oh, I wonder why it's trending, and then I saw why. So it definitely cracked me up and reminded me of the episode again. Are you watching? I know you're 20 years behind, but
I am 10 years behind.
20. The first episode came in 2000.
Oh my God, it's 20 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
even more pathetic.
Yeah.
I just watched one the other night. Oh my God, I know nobody wants to hear me. It was so funny. All right, year one, so there was a wire in the back of Larry David's yard. Follow me on this one, okay? I love telling this episode. I'm going up to people. Did you see the episode about Larry David with the wire? And they go, what year was that? 2000. So there's a wire in his backyard. To get rid of the wire, follow me on this, Rummana, he's got to get permission of his neighbor. All right, so he brings the neighbor over. The neighbor's a lawyer, real sleazy guy. Brings the neighbor over and he shows him the wire. And the neighbor says, yeah, that wire is really ugly. I'd like to help you with that. But I've always wanted to meet Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah.
The guy blackmails Larry David into bringing Julia Louis-Dreyfus over to the neighbor's house. Anyway, it goes from there.
Yeah.
And she's so funny. Everybody's always mad at Larry. That's part of the love of I can recognize that in my own life. And so they're always mad at Larry. Larry, I don't have any time to do this. I just have a few minutes. Come on, help me out.
Yeah. Jason Alexander, I think he has a cameo in it too, once or twice.
Yeah, no, they bring back the Seinfeld character.
Anyway, it's really funny. I can't believe you never watched it.
Well, okay, as I explained.
Because you're a little more hip than other people.
Yeah. Well, wait, you just said I don't know what trending means.
No, but in terms of shows and pop culture, you're a little on top of things.
Let me say this. I don't have, what is it, HBO, so I can't watch it there. But as young Dennis can tell you, I get very obsessive about watching YouTube clips. Okay, I can spend hours watching YouTube clips. And so I've watched lots of Larry David on YouTube. Okay, but I've never seen an entire show. And now I've, because out of nowhere, Prime brought back year one. I've been watching.
Oh, good. You'll
shows.
Catch up.
No,
in 10 years, you'll catch up.
I still got to get HBO unless somebody lets me share their number.
Yeah. Oh, my husband
DM us.
Mick thinks it's really weird, but Indian people, we all there's so many. I grew up with so many people. I have so many friends, Indian friends. We all share passwords.
Well, I'm joining.
So
the crew,
I'm saying you can be part of our.
I'll be the honorary Indian person on the list.
Yeah.
I got to give a shout out before you go. Evan Moore, who's been on the show before, wrote an excellent article in the Chicago Sun-Times. I urge everybody to check it out. There's so much gloom and doom in the newspaper today. Dennis and I always make this decision, Rummana, these horrific murder stories, we kind of stay away from them because they're just, I don't know what to say. It's just more about the depravity of man. But Evan Moore, excellent writer for the Chicago Sun-Times. Ben Wilson's brothers forgive killer of prep basketball stars. You got to be. Ben Wilson was a superstar high school basketball player at Simeon High School in the early '80s.
I actually know about him because, like, a couple years ago, my nephew, who's now 18 and in college, but he wanted to watch a 30 for 30. Yeah, I was going to call it 2020,
Okay.
but 30 for 30.
We all have our moments.
Anyway, sports is not my forte. But anyway,
That's
I remember.
Not true. You're a huge Cubs fan.
I do, but I'm not like. I shouldn't be like stereotypical, but I'm not like a guy where all I do is talk about sports.
Okay.
I'm not like that.
I'm like
Ben.
My
Wait
husband,
a minute.
music, politics, and sports. Like,
I do
that's
love
all.
sports.
I have so many other interests. I'm just saying.
Maggie Wunderly, who's coming on next. We're going to do about a half an hour on the White Sox pitching staff. Get ready, Maggie Wunderly.
So anyway, I remember he wanted to. I think there was a 30 for 30 on this. So I remember watching
Yes,
it, and it was, and so I do remember that. I do remember reading about or learning about this case. And Ben Wilson was this high school basketball star, and this guy bumps into him while he was having an argument with his girlfriend, and then he ends up shooting Ben Wilson, and he was like this big star. We talked about him. Anyway, his brothers basically made amends with the guy's Ben Wilson's killer, alleged killer, William Moore. And so I guess they had a kind of like a discussion where they talked about it. I think one of the brothers, Anthony Wilson, according to Evan's story, met with Mr. Moore like 3 years ago. And I didn't know he was a cousin of Alderman David Moore, which is, did you know that?
Together. Yes, I did know that because, first of all, the age difference. When Benji Wilson was killed in 1984.
Yeah, he was called Benji, right?
Yeah, everybody calls him Benji. It was huge story in Chicago.
Wasn't it a national story too?
It was national, but it you know how, I mean, we're a very violent city. But there, every now and then, there's one particular murder or murders that is just so shocking and outrageous and unexpected and tragic, although all of them would be tragic, that it just overwhelms.
It's kind of like the Dantrell Davis case. That was one of
correct.
the ones when I was in college.
And so every generation has its own.
Yeah.
And when Benji Wilson was killed, I remember Harold Washington was the mayor. It was just a devastating moment because this guy had so much potential. He was entering his senior year of high school at Simeon. They were defending state champions. He was probably going to go to DePaul and carry on the tradition of Chicago players back then playing DePaul. It was just a horrific story. Like, how could this happen in Chicago? Anyway, and then when I saw, folks, I urge everybody to read Evan Moore because it's really a story about forgiveness. I don't know if I could do that.
I don't know if I could either. A loved one, it'd just be really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, you always hear about those cases, and someone's like, "Well, I forgive them," and maybe it just makes it easier to grieve. I don't know. It just sounds so, just losing someone in like a violent way where it obviously could have been prevented. I just can't imagine. I mean, I've covered so many cases at 26 in California, and you hear. There's so many people you hear. There's such sad stories, and they're always reading victim impact statements at the sentencings of people who are accused or convicted of murder, and there are some people who say they forgive them. There's some people who don't, but I've seen it. I've seen people saying like, I forgive you and I pray for you, and I just find it really hard. I'm just trying to put myself in those shoes, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do that, but
I don't know if I could do it either. And it really requires like a tremendous reservoir of faith.
Yeah.
Even religious faith or just faith in humanity.
Yeah.
That you could.
Well, this guy seems like he's changed his life, William Moore. He works. He actually does volunteer work for the Inner City Muslim Action Network, which is actually a great organization. I can only say that because I have friends who are on the board, and I have friends who do volunteer work for them. So the organization's great. So they do a lot of programs where people who come out of prison, they try to reintegrate them into with jobs and new lives. And so I know this organization pretty well. Yeah. In fact, I went to their annual fundraising dinner, and guess who was the
Kim Fox?
Kim Fox was the.
I just because you said the Kim part. Who else? It all comes together.
So my friends are affiliated with that. So I thought that was kind of interesting that he's in this program. So it seems like he's trying to make amends. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I just don't know if I would forgive someone that quickly.
All right, before we bring on the great Maggie Wunderly to take the deep dive in national politics, I'm telling you, this woman knows more about the rules and regulations governing the process than anyone. She knows way more than Michael Bloomberg knows, that's for sure. Before we bring Maggie on,
we didn't
Rummana,
talk about Michael Bloomberg. We'll talk about that next
that will be there for next week. Michael Bloomberg.
No pressure, Maggie.
No
It's
pressure. No pressure, Maggie. Yeah. We're going to give you a quiz on all the rules. Rummana, your what's Rummana recommendation for the weekend?
I'm probably going to start Narcos. And I know my husband's pushing, Mick Dumke's pushing for High Fidelity, the remake. I like Zoe Kravitz, but I told him I'm living with a music fanatic. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it that much anymore. I saw High Fidelity actually when it came out on my birthday. It was like fun. And then I was like, I told Mick, I'm like, I don't know if I could rewatch that Living with You.
Yeah, there's I know Mick Deer. He's one of my dear friends. He's got a little
he talks
Jack
about
Black
music.
in him. Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I like music too. I'm actually a music fan, but I'm like, I just can't talk about this all the time.
Obsessively.
I wish we would have booked a Valentine's Day special with
I
Rummana
know, Rummana and Mick. Poor Mick gets trashed in the show all the time.
I don't trash him.
No,
I'm just saying,
a little
like,
bit.
he'd probably trash me. I'm just saying that I have more interest in sports, music, and politics. They veer onto different things.
Anyway, I will be watching The Assistant, a scary movie. I love scary movies.
I don't know if it's scary. It's more
suspenseful,
telling of the Hollywood industry and Harvey Weinstein. It came out last week.
It came out. I will see it tomorrow.
It's supposed to be really good.
So good.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be really good.
So anyway, that's what I got to look forward to. Rummana Hussain, thank you very much. She comes in every Friday, the Rummana Rundown. Maggie Wunderly, we've been talking about her. Bernie Sanders delegate and really knowledgeable person. How about that? About the rules and regulations governing the selection process. We'll be talking presidential politics, Bernie, Bloomberg, all that good stuff with Maggie Wunderly when we return. Hey, everybody. What you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffemanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. Jeff. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
I want to start with Rahm Emanuel, the former mayor of Chicago, chief of staff to President Obama, and someone who knows Vice President Biden very well. If you're in his ear tonight, what are you telling him?
Yeah, energy, passion. And you got to come alive in that area and be also light about it in the sense that you're going to be between Bernie and you're going to be between Elizabeth. They're going to tag team you. And if you can show that it doesn't get to you, that will be as much as anything. But remember, this is 3 hours. You have to have that energy and that impact. all 3 hours, not the first 2. So that would be it.
Hey, and remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Downloaders, you know we live stream this show, right? It's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time. Once again, at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. And when you join that YouTube channel, you can join the Ben Joravsky Show live stream chat. Hang out with Michael, Jeff, Steven, J. Marie, Brianna, and more on the Ben Joravsky Show live stream chat. They're a great bunch. Hour number 2 on the way. All right, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Friday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
So sweet.
I know, right? It's brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions for jumping on board and sponsoring this program. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Friday, February 14th. I'm ready for the weekend. And live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, Bernie Sanders delegate Maggie Wunderly will join us. And it's the long-awaited return of the Illinois political know-it-alls, Jacob Kaplan and Dan Pogoshelski. And now your host, Curb Your Enthusiasm know-it-all. Well, at least season 1.
Which is only 20 years old.
Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Maggie Wunderly in the studio. We'll bring her on in a little while. Dee has an update. Is that correct, young man?
Yes, I do. You were asking what the update was. I said, hey, wait till we get on the air, pal. We want to save
I have no idea what this update is.
We want the genuine reaction.
Okay, here we go.
All
Have
right.
a drink of water.
Following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times, John Seidel, Robert Hergeth. Oh, the hammer down Hergeth, good guy. And Mark Brown.
Man, all 3 of them.
All 3 of them.
Uh-oh, must be big.
Oh, it's big, baby. All right. The Chief of Staff to Cook County Commissioner Jeff Tobolsky has been indicted for allegedly conspiring to pay bribes to secure approval for red light cameras in the suburbs.
He's been indicted?
Indicted.
Wait, time out. This was the big news? I thought it was like Donald Trump has been impeached again. Nope. Oh, I'm a little disappointed.
Oh, man.
But, you know, listen, that's an ongoing local scandal involving the red light camera program. By the way, talk about cynicism. When red light cameras came out, Mayor Rahm and all the powers that be in the city of Chicago, state of Illinois, oh, no. Oh, these cameras are here to protect the motorists and the pedestrians from speeding drivers. Now it turns out it was all a big scam. Politicians are on the take to put these red light cameras up. The red light cameras were just shaking down motorists, get them pay more. Nobody believes anything in government anymore, Maggie Wunderly. I'm not going to force you to weigh in on this, but red light cameras really fed the sense of what? Cynicism that this average citizen has towards.
So, yes, we got Tobolsky indicted.
Tobolsky's aide.
Oh, his aide indicted. Yeah. Patrick Doherty, 64, of Palos Heights, has been hit with 3 bribery charges in an indictment made public Friday. His arraignment has not been set. He faces up to 5 years in prison on each count.
All right, very good. That scandal's ongoing. All right, folks, let me just tell you about Maggie Wunderly before I bring her on. Reporters like to act as though they know everything. You know, because you assume that if you're writing a story about something, you know everything. I'm going to give a little secret out. Many times, I'm not speaking for all reporters, let's just speak for myself because many other reporters might object to this. It's like cramming for a test. You're supposed to write, let's say, about the rules governing the process by which the Democrats nominated president. It's not something I know, Maggie Wunderly. You know, I didn't wake up knowing that. So what do? I do a little research on the internet, and then in desperation, when I'm really confused, I call someone who does know. So I end up calling Maggie Wunderly. Hey, Maggie, leave me da-da-da-da. And then she tells me everything. All right, I put it in my head for a moment, just long enough to write the thing. Then I call her up. Let's fact check this story, make sure I got it right, corrects my errors, and then I'm an expert. Oh, I know everything. People are like, wow, Ben, you really know a lot. And I owe it all to Maggie Wunderly. There was somebody like that on TIFFs whose name will go unmentioned. But by the end, I wrote so many TIFF stories, Maggie, I actually became to understand the process. But property tax is the same way. Anyway, Maggie, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on.
Glad to be here.
All right, before we take the deep dive on the delegate selection process, on the nomination, the battle for the presidency, anything you want to say, promote, talk about?
Yes, the Bernie Sanders staff is here on the ground here in Illinois, and we're doing barnstorms this weekend. And if you are interested in getting involved with the campaign, go to events.berniesanders.com and look for barnstorms. They have them all over the state this weekend.
Okay, and berniesanders.com. All right. That's one of the things we'll talk about, how somehow or other, when we get to this with the mainstream media, they malign the Bernie Sanders campaign because his supporters are so passionate and want to get involved. I've never seen anybody use that against a candidate as much as, oh my God, they're just cultists. You know, push come to shove, they won't matter. Oh, you got people who want to go to Iowa in the middle of the cold and knock on doors, and that doesn't matter. It's really a frustrating thing I have. All right, let's talk about the process. Maggie, you told me, I think it started in about 2015. Is that correct? Or no, after the last election, where the Democrats got together to try to figure out a more systematic and a fair way to determine who would be the nominee. So talk about what you went through.
Yeah, so I was on the Rules Committee in 2016 at the National Convention, and then we negotiated this package of rules changes that we wanted, and then they formed a commission called the Unity Reform Commission, and then they looked into all these rules over the next couple years. There were meetings all around the country, and they came up with these final reforms at the end of that. One of those was that the superdelegates, who would now be called automatic delegates instead because they don't vote on the first ballot anymore, would vote on the second ballot. And that's because people saw the last couple elections, the problems with people pre-pledging their votes who are superdelegates, and so the voice of the people wasn't being represented. And we wanted to actually get rid of the superdelegates and not have that, but this was our compromise, is that they don't vote till the second ballot, which normally isn't a problem, but this year might be a brokered convention.
We'll get to that. I do believe, I'm starting to think it will be a brokered convention, Meg. I'm thinking you and I had a conversation about this yesterday. I'm starting to think it will be. The impact that Bloomberg's having on this race could split the vote up many ways. When you said we wanted to do away with delegates, I presume the we in that sentence alluded to the Sanders supporters?
Yes, mainly the Sanders supporters were pushing for this on the Rules Committee.
And who is pushing from the other side?
Well, the Rules Committee has these kind of super delegates of the Rules Committee who are kind of appointed by the DNC chair. So there's that group. And then there were the Clinton Rules Committee members. I don't think they were all against the reforms, but they were just kind of told to vote against everything until we got the negotiation. That's how I felt. It
was part of negotiation.
No! I do think that probably Clinton herself didn't want a lot of the stuff other than the caucus stuff. But
now wait, when you say Clinton, this is after 2016, correct?
Well, initially this was at the convention. And so part of the reason, Bernie Sanders couldn't concede until the end is he needed to get people on these committees because we needed to make some changes in the rules and platform because we wanted to improve the Democratic Party.
So just so everybody knows, these were negotiations that were going on either during the 2016 Democratic Convention or right before the Democratic Convention. Bernie Sanders was using whatever leverage he had at that moment to force some concessions from the Clintonians who were running the party at the time, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is a matter of great dispute. Even to this day, 4 years later, Maggie, I got Clintonians who come in and they're still a little upset at the Sanders delegates for what went down in Philadelphia in 2016. What's your memory of how the convention played out and who really has a gripe from the 2016 convention?
Okay, so first of all, just background. I mean, the superdelegates did create a lot of bad blood just going into it, because since the beginning, you'd see all these states where it would flip to Clinton because of the superdelegates who happen to be in that state. And then right before the convention, they released all these emails about how they were trying to stop Bernie from, getting the nomination. And some of these emails were pretty nasty, like going after him for various things. And it was obvious the DNC, was doing their best not to have Bernie get the nomination and to support Hillary. And that just dropped right before the convention. Mm-hmm. So it was just dropped on them. They were very angry about it. That's part of, why they had a lot of protests and stuff outside the convention. That wasn't that wasn't all the Bernie delegates at the convention. They weren't all protesting, but I mean, it's like they do things to us and they expect us not to respond. Yeah. They expect us to just deal with it. But, so I think that, some of the people could have been more polite at the convention, but I do think that, when you drop something on, and these people like put their lives on hold a lot of the time because they were so excited about the possibility of Bernie Sanders' presidency. So just to, give that background on that, like how many hours they poured into this, and they felt kind of they were cheated.
Mm-hmm. The they in the sentence who dropped it, I just want to let everybody know one more time. People get upset when I say this, but it was hackers. Putin's hackers got into those Democratic computers and released those emails at the very time the Democrats were getting together. It absolutely benefited Donald John Trump to pick a fight, have the Bernie people mad at the Hillary people and vice versa at the very time they're supposed to be coming together, and we're still feeling the impact. Let's get out to what you were talking about, and I already alluded to this. You talk about keeping fights going. I have a hard time with my mainstream Democratic friends, centrists, on the issue of how they view Bernie supporters. They've got this utter disdain for Bernie supporters, and generally they try to get around it by saying, well, they're misogynists, and they allude to people who on Facebook or on Twitter who are really nasty, that's like their justification for it. But in general, they kind of view people like yourself as cultists who've given your mind over to this bizarre Bernie Sanders cult. Do you think I'm exaggerating things, or do you get that sentiment as well?
I think there's a very vocal minority who have this opinion. And the funny part is that they usually have more vitriol than the vast majority of the Bernie Sanders supporters. I actually see more vitriol coming from these people attacking the Bernie supporters. Like in this, the Bernie bros myth that they keep talking about, it's really like a self-perpetuating thing. Like they attack the Bernie supporters and the Bernie supporters push back. And the misogyny is just ridiculous. I mean, Bernie actually supported Warren running in the last cycle, and he stayed out and, until she was just sure she wasn't going to run. And he ran because the Clinton wing of the party he felt it was going, and so do I, felt it was going in the wrong direction for the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. And he has always thought women should run for office. I think they use this identity politics against Bernie. It's not that they keep, even when the reality is something different, they keep pushing it because he has a lot of female supporters. And when they try to make everyone like a white male, that's erasing them, that's erasing people of color. He has the largest number of people of color supporting him. And then I still hear these people, online or, who are just so upset that, only, they're saying only the white males like Bernie Sanders. But it's not the reality when you look at polling. I mean, that is not his base. And they're trying to pretend some other candidate who their base is primarily white is going to get all the African-American voters that are actually coming to Bernie.
Yes, it's very nasty politics, primary politics, makes it that much harder for the party to unite around. Well, if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, it's going to really make it difficult to unite around him. All right, the rules changed that benefit Bloomberg. After the fact, again, you were talking about years of meetings, negotiations. Thought you had the rules. Then they changed to enable the rules to get Bloomberg on the debate stage.
Okay, so those rules are not the ones that I worked on, which is the rules for the debates. They did talk a bit about they wanted to have more debates and have rules that were fair as to who could be in the debates or not. But they have been changing those rules over the course of the debate schedule. But most of the time it's to add requirements, to up the requirements so it's harder and harder to get on the debate stage. In this case, they took away one of the requirements, which was the small dollar fundraising. I wouldn't be surprised if they had put in this fundraising requirement to try to stop more grassroots candidates, but then Bernie's raising, the most small dollar donations of everyone. So that's, and then Bloomberg has donated money to the party. He's vowed to spend millions of dollars to helping the party. And so I think they wanted to let him be in the debates because, he's going to be providing all this easy money that they don't have to raise somewhere else. And I mean, I don't think it's necessarily, I think it might hurt him to be in the debates, quite honestly. I mean, part of why he's rising is because he has all these commercials. He doesn't have to respond to things.
That is an interesting point. So in other words, I'm looking at it that it's an advantage to have for him to be on the stage and suddenly jump to the head of the line. And you're saying, wait till people hear what he has to say. They'll be disappointed in contrast to his commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Boomerang against him. Is he absolutely, I haven't seen this, he's absolutely going to, he's not participating in the next debate, is he? The next debate that's in February, or is he participating? I just can't remember.
He's participating at the Nevada debate later this month.
Oh, he is in the Nevada
But
debate.
only if I don't think he's qualified on the polling yet. He
does need two more polls.
Yeah.
I did see this. He's got 10%. I believe he will qualify.
He probably will because his numbers have been rising in the polls.
Yes, at the expense of Biden and eventually Buttigieg and Klobuchar, I believe. That's my sense. What's your feelings about a brokered convention? Do you think we're heading there?
I think we definitely could be heading there, but it's too early to say because once one candidate might get a lot of momentum, then people might start switching their votes to vote for that person. And some of the people who are getting below 15 or in a lot of states, they're going to have to drop off at some point, or people are going to stop voting for them because they don't think they can win. So you still might not have a broker convention. You still might have somebody wrapping up the 50% plus one that they need for the nomination.
Any part of you as a delegate, you will be there, presumably, if you get elected. I keep saying you're a delegate, but yes, you have to get elected. But you would be there in Milwaukee. Is there any part of you that just looks forward to a broker convention just for the sheer entertainment of it?
It would be more, exciting, I guess, but I would much prefer to go in there with 50% of the delegates because I'm too worried about all the backroom deals that people are going to be making to try to peel off delegates to another candidate. I really don't want them to flip the popular vote. So if one candidate is ahead, I don't want them to go and flip that on the second ballot to another candidate because that would be a disaster. Trump would win, I'm pretty sure, because it would be all out in the open. Unlike, before when some of these deals were made, it wasn't out in the open where everyone was aware of it, but everyone is aware of what's going on. Everyone is aware that the superdelegates aren't supposed to vote till second ballot, and they know that, the news is reporting on it all the time nowadays. So they know where the delegate count is. So if you go in and flip it to another candidate, I think that would just lead to Trump winning.
Well, I got it. I would be definitely a repeat of the chaos that began the 2016 Democratic convention, when, as you were just talking about, where the emails, the hacked emails, were released on the eve of the convention, and that there was turmoil, there was protest. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I remember her press conference. She was heckled at a press conference, so the Democrats were divided. Just imagine if you take that to a next level, where there's this. You're right, so much backroom wheeling and dealing, and then rumors get out about who made what deal behind in the back rooms, and then allegations go forth, and people start tweeting stuff out and putting stuff out there. Yes, I think it would be very messy. To put it mildly, not something the Democrats would want to have going into the Trump race. That said,
and part of the reason they agreed to these rules, because we did not have the majority on any of these committees. Okay, so part of the reason they agreed to the rules is they knew that they needed to show they're going to be more democratic in order to keep the party together. So just going in and flipping a vote, that would be like the opposite of what they spent all this time.
More Democratic, small d Democratic. Yep. All right, so let's get into the first two elections that we had, a primary and a caucus. And I had a friend of mine, Benji, who's a big Bernie Sanders supporter, texted me the other day. And he pointed out that Bernie Sanders is 2 for 2 in winning the popular vote. He won in Iowa the popular vote, and he won the popular vote in New Hampshire. And yet at the moment, I believe he trails in the delegate race by 1. I know it's very early, and the guy he trails by 1 is Pete Buttigieg. In my humble opinion, he'll be out of the race because Bloomberg's going to take his votes, and he can't get any black support. But nonetheless, how in the world is it possible, Maggie, that the winner, 2 for 2 in the popular vote, is trailing in the delegate vote by 1?
Okay. So for starters, I mean, they're reporting this, but the results are not really called in Iowa because they're recanvassing it. And they are recanvassing it because there were a lot of math errors. And the attorney for the Iowa Democratic Party said that they can't change the math errors because that would be changing a legal record. And you can't introduce opinion into the situation. Now, math, anybody who is a math geek or, math is not an opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's a mistake, if you did the math wrong, and really the votes are what should be the determining factor, not if somebody doesn't know how to do math and then the answer was wrong. So I'm hoping with the recanvass, because whenever you get like a recanvass involved, election lawyers get involved, hoping they can dispute this, because I have seen this with parties, like if they hire an attorney, the attorney basically defends whatever the party wants, but then they pretend like the attorney is some kind of neutral arbiter, of everything and the final authority, but an attorney advocates for their client. So, and then with the reason that the popular vote is so much higher, and then he's still behind in the state delegate equivalents. That is because the congressional districts, there's 4 congressional districts in Iowa. They calculate the number of delegates based on the previous election, like how many Democrats came out to vote that election. And then they divide that all the way down to the precinct level. And by the time you do that, the numbers are so off. Then they round in each precinct the number of delegates. So those numbers, all those roundings, the numbers get way, way off by the time, they get to these state delegate equivalents. And Pete was ahead by 1.5 of these state delegate equivalents. And those are approximately like a 50th of an actual delegate. So it's like this tiny fraction of a delegate. And I think they had put him up by 2 even at some point, and it's just ridiculous. Like, you would be up by 2 delegates for this tiny fraction when you're also behind in the popular vote, and there's also like 100 precincts that have errors. And then so because of this statement by the lawyer, I think, the Sanders campaign was going to just like let it go, but then they were like, this is ridiculous. They're not fixing math errors. We're going to do the recanvass. And then, of course, Buttigieg jumps in and he's like, I want to recanvass precincts too. But a lot of his he was objecting to the satellite caucuses. And the satellite caucuses is primarily college students who are away from Iowa to help them participate, and people who are like shift workers, who are like working class people who can't go during the normal caucus hours. And Buttigieg did horrible in those demographics. Those are not his demographics. And so now he's challenging, he wants them to have less points and saying like it should be calculated a different way. So that's what's going on with that. But it's completely open, in my opinion. So that's why I'm going with the popular vote until they get that cleared up. So
when they talk about doing a recanvassing of the vote, it's a caucus. In other words, so what is there to recanvass?
Okay. So this is another rules change we made in the rules package. Okay. So it used to be they just recorded those delegates. They recorded like how many delegate equivalents or delegates you got in each precinct. Well, now we had changed the rules because there was no way to go back and recount something. You couldn't tell if anybody made a mistake. You couldn't tell if somebody cheated or, anything was amiss. So they said that now you have to record the votes. You have to record the votes on the first round and you have to record the votes at the end. And Bernie was ahead like 6,000 on the first round. And then when people kind of reassembled, then he was maybe only 2,500 votes ahead, but he was still ahead of everybody else. And he still picked up from the previous round. He picked up people. He didn't lose people. So,
but Buttigieg picked up more people. That's why Buttigieg closed the margin, correct?
Yeah, except that he was still 2,500 points behind Bernie.
That is correct.
Yeah.
He's still behind. Get that part of the story. Still behind. All right.
Yeah. So all of this, and then they have these cards they have to fill out so they can actually keep track of how people are voting on first and second round. Yeah. And that's all new because of these rules changes. And some people are mad at us for these rule changes, but all the rule changes did was make it so everyone can see it. Yeah. Otherwise,
why would they be mad at? I love my Democrats to death, but man, you guys are weird. Why would they be mad at the rule change that made it more transparent?
Because they think that now, like, it gives Trump, ammunition because everyone could see that it was a mess. But I mean,
man, Democrats, you guys are so afraid of what Trump's going to tweet. You're so intimidated by it. That gets back to the Soviet Union thing. Trump's going to tweet out that Bernie had his. Meanwhile, Democrats, all these anti-Bernie people say it all the time. So I don't know. That maybe you kind of let the cat out of the bag. It's not like it's going to be big news. Anyway, all right. So they're worried about Trump tweeting. Is that what they're worried about? So okay. So you're gonna have a paper trail then that they're going to recanvass and do all the math again and determine. By the way, ultimately, Maggie, I think you'll agree that it probably won't matter. We're talking about maybe 1 or 2 delegates.
And then actual delegates, I don't think that's going to make a difference. It's more being able to claim you won Iowa. So,
which, by the way, won't matter after Super Tuesday at all. All right. Our next 2 guests, Jacob Kaplan and Danny Pokoshelsky, are in the studio. We're going to bring them on in a little bit. Before I let you go, your opinion, should we continue with the process that we have where Iowa leads off with a caucus, or should we switch to a different, when I say we, Democrats, a lifelong Democrat, I use the we, should the Democrats switch to a different state and a different way of beginning the presidential primary? Your thoughts, Maggie Wunderly?
I'd prefer primaries because this whole process, I mean, it just showed how undemocratic it is. I mean, just even the way they allocate the delegates, and that there's too many people who don't know what they're doing involved, and things are getting screwed up. So I think a primary would be better and easier for people to vote. And, I think going first, in my opinion, it should be a different state every time.
Wow,
like that's
move
my
the Super Bowl to different cities.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
I never heard. Man, that's a good one. Jacob Kaplan going, yeah, I could live with that. So in other words, Illinois would be in 2024, and then Montana would be in 2028. I just made up Montana. I don't know why I thought of Montana. I don't either. No, you wouldn't want Montana. Maybe New York would get a shot at it, or some other big state, diverse state. Yeah. All right, very good. Maggie Wunderly, before we let you go, any other last things you want to say? You want to mention that Bernie thing again?
Yes, we're having barnstorms all weekend for the Bernie Sanders campaign. Go to events.berniesanders.com and search for barnstorms, and they will all pull up all over the state. So
very good. Thank you so much, Maggie, for coming in. I really appreciate it. On deck, as I said, Jacob Kaplan and Danny Pogoszelski, the political know-it-alls. They'll be with us when we return.
How did you go from sharing stories over the years to deciding to write a book?
Good question, Mayor. Good question.
Are you craving some Chicago-style marijuana? And come on down to Portillo's on South Pulaski. Hello, I'm Fat Al. And I'm Southside Donnie. Portillo's, where you can get a brat with some pot. Like our char cheddar Polish joints, smothered in cheese and topped with sweetened hot peppers. Or try a slice of our deep dish kush, a butter crust, 6 inches of cheese and sauce, and some Primo Chronic. We also have a large selection of water pipes. Da bongs. So come on down to Portillo's. For Chicago-style wacky tobacco, come to Portillo's on South Pulaski. Hey, don't bogart that dog.
How's it going, everybody? Every time Dan Pogoszelski and Jacob Kaplan come on, they do a Facebook Live thing. They try and do it in the middle of the show. Usually irritates me, so I figure let's do it during the break.
Okay, tell us what's going on right now here today.
Maggie Wunderly, who you can see over there,
Say hi, Maggie. Come on.
the pride and joy of Kane County, Bernie Sanders delegate, was just on the show explaining the rules and regulations governing the process. Young Patrick, our social media expert, dropped in today. And, of course, Dan, that's Dan right there with the nice hat.
Nice
Jacob
hat.
Kaplan, Executive Director of Cook County Democratic Politics, Democratic Party, excuse me. We're going to take the deep dive in all the political news. I'm going to ask him about Bloomberg versus Bernie. Don't duck and dodge, all right? Come on, answer the questions. Bloomberg versus Bernie. It's centrist versus lefty. It's going to be one-on-one for the nomination. That's my prediction. I'm going to say Buttigieg, Biden, they're all falling by. If you're a centrist, you got to vote for the billionaire. And if you're a lefty and a person with true democratic values, did I show my bias there? You got to vote for Bernie. So that's what it's coming down to.
Here, wait. Dr. D, did you just say that our friend Mr. Joravsky here is feeling the Berg. Is that what you said? Is that what you said?
That's correct. That's correct.
If he's the nominee, I will vote for him because I am vote blue no matter
You
who.
have to share that other awesome quip you had, Dr. D.
What's
Everybody.
that? Oh, vote Bloom no matter whom. That's one of our live stream chatters.
Who said that, man?
One of our live stream chatters. I can't remember.
I got to give him credit. I'm going to steal that and pretend I said it.
Awesome. Well, happy Valentine's Day and enjoy this wonderful treat that is the Ben Joravsky Show. Where can you download it?
Wherever you download, right, G?
Chicago Sun-Times, Chicago Reader websites, and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts.
That's my man right there. All right,
Boom.
we're going to
See
cut
you
this
later.
off and do the show.
All right.
Good job, man. Maggie, welcome to the Political Know-It-Alls.
And welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago
We
Sun-Times.
just did a Facebook Live thing with young Daniel, who is a social media guru, and Jacob Kaplan, Executive Director of the Cook County Democratic Party. We're going to be talking Bloomberg versus Bernie. No ducking, no dodging. The future of the Democratic Party is at stake here. Maybe you guys disagree with me. Maybe you think that Joe Biden still has a chance, or Pete Buttigieg still has a chance, or Amy Klobuchar still has a chance, or young Tom Steyer, who's still in the race, still has a chance. I believe that the centrists will coalesce around Michael Bloomberg. I would urge them to do. If I were a centrist, that's what I would do. I would go after the billionaire. Why not? He's got the $1 billion. Before we bring him on, you got an update, young man?
Coming up a little later on in the program, Pat Weiland, our guest today, and our social media guru. He's got a segment that he created, Limbaugh or Bloomberg. That's going to be coming up a little later on. But everybody, remember to follow us on social media at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show. You can see that video Dan and Jacob just made. Oh, that's trippy, huh? You heard it. And now you can go see what they made. Oh, get the bong out. So go check that out at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, at both Facebook and Twitter. Shout out to Brianna. Brianna, I saw you on the live stream chat. She said that she follows this show avidly, and she always catches up on the Ben Joravsky bonus interviews. She says by about Monday or Tuesday, she's fresh out of content. She literally listens to everything that we have. But hey, Brianna, don't worry. We got more Benny J bonus interviews this weekend. Ben, who do we have on tap here for the Benny J bonus interview? I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
I can't remember, man. So many
Well, I mean,
guests
it's no
coming through
surprise you can't remember,
Yeah.
but I can't remember.
Wait,
What
hold
the
on. Let me
hell?
my little book.
Yeah, get that book out. I know. Henry Davis.
Henry Davis.
He's back, guys.
The pride and joy of South Bend, Indiana. He's a councilman from South Bend, Indiana. And to put it mildly, Jacob Kaplan, not a big fan of Mayor Pete. Just putting that out there.
So I've heard.
Yeah, so he's not a big
So
fan of
you've
it.
heard.
You know
Yeah.
what? All right,
Understatement of the year.
I'm going to put this out here, Jacob, Dan, get your thoughts. I'm not a big fan of Mayor Pete either. I'm far to the left of him, and he lost me when he started talking about he only thought that tuition-free college should go to it shouldn't go to wealthy people, and I believe it's like Social Security. If it's not universal, you're not going to support it. Let's be honest. And then there were some funny lines. Some comedian said, like, no rich person goes to a public college anyway. So, but he lost me on the issue. It did strike me as a Republican talking point. That said, Limbaugh really crossed the line. I don't know if you saw this, Rush Limbaugh, his comments that America's not ready for Pete Buttigieg. So, see, and they gave him that congressional
medal.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
It's just freaking ridiculous, man.
Trump just doesn't care.
Well,
he's just devaluing everything. So
I was going to say, since you mentioned Limbaugh, let's go ahead and do the segment. Pat Weiland's here right now. Our segment, Limbaugh or Bloomberg. Pat Weiland, the mic's yours,
Poor
my
guy's
friend.
eating something.
Okay, guys. No, I'm just chewing. I'm not eating.
Oh,
so that's okay.
There's a difference.
Yeah, big difference. Well, as Dennis mentioned, it's called Bloomberg or Limbaugh. It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to read you a quote, and you're going to tell me if it was Medal of Freedom winner Rush Limbaugh or Democratic presidential candidate Mike Bloomberg.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
You ready, young Daniel? Oh, he's like, I don't
So
know.
we go.
Here we
all
go.
right,
Here we go. Quote number 1. The biggest lies are the check's in the mail, I'll respect you in the morning, and I'm glad I'm Jewish.
Oh, I know the answer to this.
You do?
Am I allowed to say? Or is it just for these guys?
No, I actually don't know. I don't know the rules to my own bit.
No, you are the host. You should go.
Michael Bloomberg said that. I
Michael
just read
Bloomberg?
that. Yeah.
You just read that?
I read it last night. I don't know if I told you this. I was up until like 5 in the
Someone
morning.
mentioned that to me. Yeah, he looked a lot like you.
I did not get any sleep last night. And one of the things I was doing, Jacob, was like obsessively reading about Michael Bloomberg. Bloomberg thinks he's a funny guy, a witty guy, and that was his idea of a funny, witty line. So,
Is that your initiation into being a political know-it-all?
what, being up until 5 in the morning reading about Michael?
No,
Bloomberg?
knowing the answer to that.
Knowing the answer to
Yeah.
that? I'll have you know, young man.
Someone's never going to be on this show ever again. First name starts with a D, last name with a P. I won't mention any names.
Did you know that was Bloomberg?
No, but I
I
kind of
guessed.
I would have guessed that.
Guessed it, yeah. I don't
Based
think
on
Rush.
context.
I don't think Rush Limbaugh would have been obsessed with the Jewish part
Yeah.
of it. You know, Bloomberg is Jewish. He thought it was funny. So, all right, you have another one?
Ben was a political know-it-all before it was cool. That's all I'm going to say. Second quote, there's 3 total. If women wanted to be appreciated for their brains, they'd go to the library instead of Bloomingdale's. Rush Limbaugh or Mike Bloomberg?
Do I answer again, or do I throw this? I know the answer to this one.
Yeah, I have a feeling you saw what I saw, Ben.
I have a feeling deep inside. Yes, that was Michael Bloomberg, the same article. I was actually going to talk about this with Jacob again. But that's the candidate the centrists are going to rally around.
How long ago did he say that?
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
I like that. That's already, you know, distancing himself. Good. That's why he's a great strategist.
You know,
I bet it was a long time ago.
You know, I don't have that. I only have that he said it.
He said it. I believe he said that. There was a collection. I'm doing this from memory from an article I read at about 4:30 a.m. But there was a collection of the wit and wisdom. I'm not making this up, of Michael Bloomberg that somebody gave to him, and I believe that was one of the quotes. So it could have been a 90s thing. It could have been an O's thing. But it's clearly he wasn't worried about it until 2020 when he's running for president. It's I was just joking, or whatever he's going to come up with.
Yeah.
What did Trump say? Locker room humor. Remember that?
Locker room talk.
Locker room.
The one thing that I think is just interesting in the dynamics in the race in general that you see is how the Democratic Party has really moved to the left from that Bill Clinton days of triangulation, and I think the fact that we have people that were involved in politics back then, right, and bringing back what they were saying, let's say 20 years ago, and now, and I think that it's something worth noting.
Well, I took a note of that because I'm going to throw that at you. I'm going to come right back at you. There's a counterattack going against Bernie, which seems to be a movement back toward triangulation, and this is something I've been. It's really irritating the hell out of me when I see the counterattacks at Bernie Sanders. It's an attempt to move them back, to take the lefty wing of the Democratic Party, which I believe expresses the values of this is just my bias. I mean, all Democrats, when they run for office, they talk about these values that we have, helping people, and yet Clinton always wanted to win the vote to sell out our values or dilute our values. Okay, this is my opinion. Whether you guys agree with me or not, you can feel free to or not. And I think that's what we're seeing whenever anybody says Bernie's supporters are too idealistic. You know, they're trying to go back to the old days of because of triangulation, because they're worried about some swing voter in DuPage County. Or
Did you read the article that appeared in USA Today about how Bernie Sanders deserves a second look from all voters in the Democratic Party? This appeared was it 2 or 3 days ago?
I did read that article, and I can't remember who wrote that article.
I don't remember who wrote it, but I think one of the things that's very important to retort to that argument, human beings are weird. We're funny. 2 + 2 can equal 3, and it can equal 15. And that's one of the flaws that you have with triangulation. I bring up this article because the authenticity that Bernie Sanders has. People are not rational actors. People are tribal. People respond to authenticity. People just do things because they like people. And I think that we've seen this with Bernie. When you're talking about many of the people that support Bernie Sanders, you have people that are all over. And when you just try to poll test and triangulate, people respond to that inauthenticity And we've seen how that fails. In that USA Today article, they talk about how Democrats rehash the people that try to bring up, well, we need to be more formulaic. And there's a role for that, of poll testing and the like. But whereas we lost in 1972 the Democratic nomination, let's remember that in 2016, we lost because there wasn't enough enthusiasm. And so disregarding that is at our own peril.
There's so much you said there. The only part I disagree with is 2 + 2 is always 4. All right?
No.
So just
human beings, we're funky math, man.
All right. Somebody might say 2 + 2 is 15, but it doesn't make it anything other than 4. All right, what's the third quote before I take this to Jacob?
All right, I suspect, Ben, you might have seen the same article that I am pulling from, but the third and final quote is, quote, "I know for a fact that any self-respecting woman who walks past a construction site doesn't get a whistle will turn around and walk past again and again until she does get one."
And that was not Rush Limbaugh. That was Michael Bloomberg. And yes, this article was, I got to shout out to Joanna, my good friend Joanna, texted me this article, so I owe it to Joanna. That's the reason I saw the article. When I read that quote, which is perhaps the most disgusting quote of them all, though it's a competitive race, I wondered, like, why was Al Franken kicked out of the Democratic Party? I mean, the Democratic Party back, when did Franken?
2018. Yeah.
Yeah. Jacob, the Democrats back then were going through this process. We were reevaluating the Democratic attitude toward women, what was an acceptable behavior by Democratic candidates. We were trying to contrast the Democratic Party with the Republican Party, which had Roy Moore was the candidate in Alabama. Donald Trump has been accused of rape. So we're trying to contrast the Democratic Party with Donald Trump. Now, follow me on this. And the notion is that's the way. I'm not making this up. This is what the centrists would tell me. That's the way we can get swing voters in DuPage County and suburban Milwaukee and suburban Pennsylvania and suburban Maryland to vote Democratic and not vote for Trump. Now you got Michael Bloomberg, who's got a catalog of these outrageous comments. What does that do to our effort to reposition ourselves as the anti-Trump party?
I mean, it just throws it out, I think. I mean, he is in many ways like Trump. There's similarities there. And, I mean, it is worrying. I also don't really think he's a Democrat, personally. I mean, didn't he speak up for George W. at the 2000 Republican convention? Wasn't he a speaker? I mean, I don't know. It's very disturbing. The other thing with Bloomberg that's really, there was just an article in The Intercept about this yesterday, is the fact that he's paying his staff, he's paying field staff so much money that all these other local campaigns can't afford anybody anymore. Everyone's going to work for Bloomberg, so there's shortages of campaign workers. So how's that? That's not really building the Democratic Party when you're like swallowing up all the staff and because you're paying them so much. I don't know.
I saw $6,000 a month. Is that what you saw?
$6,000 a month. I think some are even being paid more than that. So
$6,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
See, like to Bloomberg, that's nothing.
Yeah.
$6,000 a month is like the Ben Joravsky show. Oh,
I thought when J.B. Pritzker ran for governor, he was paying the most of anybody, but this is like 2 or 3 times as much as J.B. was paying.
So ultimately, you're saying it could hurt the Democrats because you're taking staffers away from important what they call down ballot races.
I think it's already happening. I think he's already hurting some of these races. So I again, like you said earlier, if he's the nominee, I'll support him and vote for him because I'm going to vote for whoever the Democrat is. Doesn't matter. But I'm very nervous about where this is going right now.
You know, one of the things that comes to mind for me, and I think we've had a number of conversations about this, is that Democrats are horrible at messaging. I mean, I should say many times. Historically, in the past 50 years, we have been horrible. And part of this is that we are reactive. Here you had where, getting back to your question about Al Franken resigning, you have where oftentimes the Democrats are reactive and they allow, in this case, Donald Trump to frame the debate. He's the person who's like, okay, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this. And then all too often you have where the Democrats are just kind of flubbing it up like, oh, well, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this. And so this leads to answer your question about Al Franken, right? When you're asking why did Al Franken resign, I think in part it was a reaction, a quick reaction to what had, to Donald Trump being able to frame this as like, look at the Democrats. They're hypocrites once again, and they are simply not listening to their people. When Steve Bannon was on Bill Maher a few days ago.
Yeah.
No, but
Wait, which for Maher or for Bannon?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
He pointed out, he's like, what happened to the Democratic Party of the populists, of the party which was of the working class? And when you look at it, Donald Trump is an oligarch, no doubt about it. But his whole strategy, even in the eyes of his opponents, was never to paint him as one. It was just to paint him as irrational, corrupt. No, actually not corrupt. To paint him as irrational, to paint him as a person that was crude. But they never went for, I believe, the two issues that you really could have attacked him on, which is corruption and the fact that he is an oligarch. And when we look at these past few election cycles, whether it was Mitt Romney against Obama, look at those counties which flipped from Obama to Trump. Those are the ones where people voted against the person that they perceived was in tune with elites. And so that's something I think that we as Democrats really need to think about.
Jacob, what is it about the Democrats that leads people to say they're the party of the elites?
Well, I just think we generally, Democrats aren't, that's not the Democratic way generally, but when you have somebody who is a billionaire trying to put himself out there as a Democrat and spending all this money and all that, it just leads to people wondering if that's really the truth or not. I mean, I do think there's still Democratic ideals that are shared by most Democrats and most of the candidates, but I think this is an exception, and I'm nervous about that. So,
well, one thing that I have difficulty with is, and you already cited this, Jacob. It's like there's just two, or maybe it was you, Danny. I can't remember who said it. There's two benchmark elections that seem to govern the notion what's the most winnable strategy for the Democrats to follow. One benchmark election took place before anybody in this room was born, 1972, when George McGovern, who's very much a liberal, was defeated by Richard Nixon in one of the most powerful electoral college landslides that we've ever had. All right. And so that lesson that Clinton took is we will never go too far left. We're always going to move to the center. That's the governing principle of the people who've been leading the Democratic Party ever since. The second lesson, which is a relatively new lesson, I think Maggie Wunderly may have learned this lesson in 2016, is when the Democratic Party nominated Hillary Clinton, and she was so mainstream and she was so tailored to the middle, and so that they lost all meaning, and so they couldn't rally their support. So now you have these two conflicting views of where the Democrats should go. Should they follow the Bernie Sanders rally the base strategy, or should they follow the Bill Clinton sell out the base strategy, move to the right? What's your sense of things, Jacob?
Well, I think they should follow the Bernie strategy personally. I mean, I think that's, and I hear again and again from people that, who voted for Trump in a lot of those places Dan mentioned, and, these Rust Belt counties and all that say they'll vote for Bernie now if Bernie's the nominee, but I don't think they're going to vote Democratic for necessarily anybody else. So, I mean, that's just my sense of it. I could be wrong. Again, whoever the nominee is, I will support that person. The party will as well. And I think there's some other good candidates in the race, but I just I worry about the Bloomberg factor and how that's all going to pan out. So,
which theory do you subscribe to, Dan?
Well, sir, like I said earlier, 2 + 2 can equal 3. It can equal 15, right?
He's sticking to that.
I know, right? Obstinate political mind, right? No,
that's
but
for sure.
No, I've said this for a long time, where I think when you're talking about how people operate, people are are very pulled in by authenticity. When you look at the loss in 2000 of George W. Bush and Al Gore came across as someone who was triangulating, someone who didn't have the same passion that he had a few years later when we saw An Inconvenient Truth, right? He was not that same character. And when you saw George W. Bush, people said, well, I voted for the guy because I could have a beer with him, right? And that this is somebody who really was an authentic person. And especially today when people are really sick of all these polished figures, let's look at the Republican primary, right? You had 16 other candidates, right? People that were the epitome of poll tested, of saying the right thing at the right time, had all their credentials from the different think tanks, and then they just felt like paper tigers. And so you need to make sure that there's a real groundswell and a people movement, and you ignore that at your peril.
I think the Democrats are in danger of that if they follow the advice of so many of the mainstream people. We're gonna when we come back, I'll play that Chris Matthews thing to get your reaction to it. But conventional wisdom among the Democratic leaders or the mainstream Democrats is that Bernie's too extreme, too lefty, and they got to go move toward the middle. It seems as though, Jacob Kaplan, that the Republicans are subscribing to that same conventional wisdom. Been reading stories about the Eric Zorn. Let's give him a shout out in the Tribune. Wrote a column today about Rush Limbaugh's advice to Republicans. Follow me on this, in South Carolina, to vote in the Democratic primary for Bernie. Because Rush Limbaugh, the great political mind, Rush Limbaugh, has come to the conclusion that Bernie would be easier for Donald Trump to defeat than any mainstream Democrat. What's your thought about that strategy?
I just disagree. I mean, if they want to do that, bring it on. But I disagree with that. And I just think if Bernie's the nominee and he's up there on the debate stage with Trump, I think it's not going to be pretty for the president. And I think that Bernie will hold his own. And sure, I guess their whole thing is, oh, you can tar him as a socialist and all that, but I mean, they're going to tar whoever the Democratic nominee is a socialist. Even if it's Bloomberg, he'll be a socialist. Come on, it doesn't matter. That's been the attack on Democrats for forever.
Yeah,
it's nothing new.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's a mistaken idea on behalf of the Republicans. But I guess I'm glad they have that thought. So
I would like to actually point out. Let's look at history. There's a well-known quote by Eisenhower who talks about how if you tried to break unions or try to eliminate Social Security, you'd be banished to the peripheries of politics because it would be so radical. And you had a bunch of people who didn't think that was radical and wanted to make that mainstream.